everyone, this is Warhawk Beyond 2040, bringing to you another edition of the Wrestling Discussion Series. And July 21st, 2003 marks 20 years ago that Randy Orton declared himself as the Legend Killer for the first time ever, as he would go on to take out some of the biggest legends in the wrestling business. And for today's edition, I am going to be talking about the success and failures of the Legend Killer run from July 2003 to July 2007. Now, Randy Orton made his debut in WWE in 2002, and he was pretty much a generic babyface, didn't really have much going for him. He would get injured, and then, as we all know, he would begin those awful Randy Orton news updates on his injury. And upon his return, he joined Evolution with Triple H, Ric Flair, and Batista. But he wouldn't really find his own identity or his own foot in the door until he returned in May 2003. And he would slowly start to make himself one of the main stars to watch on WWE TV. But it wasn't until June 2003 Randy Orton got into the face of hardcore legend Mick Foley and pretty much badmouthed him. That was kind of the beginning of the early signs of the Legend Killer. The following week later, Randy Orton would kick Mick Foley down a flight of stairs in Madison Square Garden, and he was pretty much off to the races from that point. But it wasn't until the July 21st edition of Raw that Randy Orton declared himself as the Legend Killer for the first time ever, thanks to a little bit of a nod from Nature Boy Ric Flair and Triple H. And the Legend Killer gimmick, as I mentioned, was Randy Orton going around disrespecting legends and taking them out in matches or sneak attacks or spitting in their faces. You know, anything Randy Orton could do to get himself noticed. And I thought the Legend Killer gimmick worked very well for Randy Orton's character, and we would be treated to a large series of Legend Killer versus Legend matches over the course of his Legend Killer run. And this was going on while he was a member of Evolution. But it wasn't really until the September 15th edition of Raw was when the Legend Killer was officially born. Now, I know I said it was July 21st. That was the first time the Legend Killer nickname was tagged, but officially it was September 15th, 2003 that Randy Orton introduced himself to the world as the Legend Killer when he RKO'd the Fabulous Moolah in the middle of the ring. So Randy Orton was pretty much off to the races, and there was no stopping the new Legend Killer. So his first official Legend versus Legend Killer match would be at Unforgiven 2003 against perhaps the greatest in-ring performer of all time, the Heartbreak Kid himself, Shawn Michaels, in perhaps the best match of Unforgiven 2003. And Randy Orton essentially killed the legend of HBK. You can't get off to a much better start than that. One of the biggest names in wrestling history and one of the cornerstones of the 1990s in Shawn Michaels. If I was a Legend Killer and if I wanted to take out a big legend, you can't get any better than Shawn Michaels. He was off to a great start. And then from there, he was off to the races. At Survivor Series 2003, he played a very big role in Stone Cold's career coming to an end. Now, I know he said he killed the legend of Stone Cold. Technically, he didn't really, because I always look at it like if you're going to kill a legend, you do it in the ring in a match. Now, technically, he didn't face Stone Cold in a match, one-on-one, but because Stone Cold's career was on the line in the traditional 5-on-5 Survivor Series match, I suppose in a way Randy Orton kind of did. although he didn't actually technically beat Austin. So he contributed to Stone Cold's career, coming to an end as Raw co-GM. Then at Armageddon 2003, he would kill the legend of ECW icon Rob Van Dam and win the Intercontinental title for the first time ever in his young career. So by this point, Randy Orton was on a real roll, killing legends, Shawn Michaels, driving Stone Cold out of WWE, Rob Van Dam. There was no stopping Randy Orton. And I feel the Intercontinental title run of Randy Orton during his Legend Killer gimmick, I really felt that Randy Orton made the IC title mean something again, and he would go on to hold that title for 7 months. Very impressive run. Had a lot of good matches during that time. Then at WrestleMania 20, along with Flair and Batista, he would defeat The Rock and Sock Connection after pinning Mick Foley 1, 2, 3 after an RKO. And during that time leading up to WrestleMania 20, he would take out Sergeant Slaughter and a number of other legends as well. And you could really see Randy Orton's star was growing really big every week. And a lot of that was thanks to the Legend Killer gimmick. You know, it's interesting when you look at his early days in Evolution, he didn't really have much going for him. He was just like, you know, another hired gun in Evolution. But once he got the Legend Killer gimmick, he had something to get his teeth into. His personality shined. Great promos, unbelievable matches. Randy Orton was on a roll. Then we would get to Backlash 2004. Now, for me, I think this was the best feud of Randy Orton's Legend Killer run. His program with Mick Foley was just fantastic. And just like 4 years earlier, what Mick Foley did for Triple H made him a huge star. He did the same thing again for Randy Orton as they had an epic hardcore match at Backlash 2004. One of the best matches of the night and one of the best matches of the Ruthless Aggression era. And for me, this was where the Legend Killer gimmick was taken to new heights. You know, Randy Orton, he went in there as the cocky upstart and he went out of there as a legend and showing everyone that he was more than just a pretty face. He was a tough guy. He could take bumps, he could take punishment, and he could dish it out. And wow, I would go on to say that was probably Randy Orton's greatest performance in his career. He showed everyone that he could hang with the best and thrive, and he did thrive. And the Legend Killer gimmick was just getting red hot every single week. After he lost the Intercontinental title to Edge, of course, he successfully defended it a month before against Shelton Benjamin. He would win a number one contenders match on Raw, and he would get a title shot against Chris Benoit at SummerSlam 2004, and essentially kill the 18-year legacy of Chris Benoit to become the youngest World Heavyweight Champion in history. You know the rest. The next night on Raw, he got kicked out of Evolution, and the following week, he defiantly spat in Triple H's face and became a babyface. Now, this is where the Legend Killer gimmick started to lose a little bit of steam for me because originally the Legend Killer was not a fan favorite. The Legend Killer was a cocky, arrogant heel who disrespected legends, humiliated them in the ring, humiliated them in matches, sneak attacks, you name it. Now, all of a sudden, the Legend Killer was more looked upon as something to be cheering for. I didn't get behind that. Not one bit. This was, I wouldn't say a low point, but this was not one of the high points of the Legend Killer run because, as I said, when you hear the name Legend Killer, I don't think of a fan favorite. I think of someone who's a monster heel. I don't really think of, someone I would want to cheer for, but that's what happens. Randy Orton's babyface run, yeah, we could talk about that for another time, but I'm still going to mention it anyway. Yeah, it didn't do him a lot of favours. I mean, he was still hot, and he would still get pops and things like that. But it wasn't really the legend killer I know and love to hate, so to speak. So after the fans soured on him, Randy Orton was still a babyface, but he was starting to get a few boos because it just wasn't working. Randy Orton is a natural heel. That's where he's at his best. And the Legend Killer gimmick was what made him the man that he is. So, yeah, the whole babyface run kind of slowed it down a little bit. So, fast forward a few months into 2005, Randy Orton made a shocking announcement by challenging The Undertaker and his then 12-0 streak at WrestleMania. Now, this is where the Legend Killer gimmick really picked itself back up again and put everyone on notice that this is the guy who could possibly end the streak. Randy Orton showed nothing but disrespect to perhaps the biggest legend in WWE, and he would turn heel once again after delivering a brutal RKO to his girlfriend Stacy Keibler. The Legend Killer of old was back. WrestleMania 21 was coming up. Legend versus Legend Killer at WrestleMania 21. The ultimate match. Could Randy Orton do the unthinkable? Could he end the streak? Now, this is where the Legend Killer gimmick took frightening new heights because the RKO brought a whole new meaning to the term out of nowhere. All it would take is one RKO to The Undertaker, streak's over. Fantastic match. This really put Randy Orton back on the map as a top heel, and he put on an unbelievable performance. Even though he lost, he still showed everyone that he could hang with the legends in WWE. And the Legend Killer was back, more cocky, arrogant than ever, and I was so happy. And he'll go on to have a great feud with The Undertaker for all of 2005. Randy Orton would finally kill the legend of The Undertaker at SummerSlam 2005, thanks to his dad, Cowboy Bob Orton. Him and his dad would defeat him in a handicap casket match at No Mercy. He would pick up the win for SmackDown at Survivor Series 2005, and then he would go on to have a classic Hell in a Cell match with The Undertaker at Armageddon. So the Legend Killer gimmick was back on top, and Randy Orton was back to being his arrogant self once again. Now, the Legend Killer gimmick would take some interesting turns. He would join forces with Edge to form Rated RKO as they would go on a personal mission to kill the legend of D-Generation X. Now, in between this, Randy Orton had a program with Hulk Hogan at SummerSlam. I'm still pissed about that. Randy Orton should have killed the legend of Hulk Hogan. Funny how you look at the two opponents. Undertaker, one of the most giving wrestlers in the history of the business, made Randy Orton look like a star and put him over. Strong. Hulk Hogan, selfish, made Orton look like a joke, didn't put him over, and that was Hulk Hogan's final match, which we didn't know at the time, but when you look back at it, yeah, Hogan should have put him over. But, that's another conversation for another time. So the Legend Killer gimmick was still running wild. They would take credit for DX coming to an end, Edge and Orton, after Triple H tore his quad at New Year's Revolution. And this is where the Legend Killer gimmick was taken to brutal heights. With the punt kick, where he would kick people's heads off. He would take out Shawn Michaels. He would take out Randy Orton. He would take out a lot of legends. Now, unlike in the early days where he would RKO someone and say, I've killed the legend of such and such, with the punt kick, when he kicks you in the head, you were done. For all intent and purposes, you were not getting up from that. And the Legend Killer run would quietly come to an end at the Great American Bash 2007, when Randy Orton defeated the legendary Hall of Famer Dusty Rhodes in a Texas Bull Rope match and effectively killed the legend of the American Dream. So Randy Orton, you look at all the legends he killed during his Legend Killer run: Undertaker, Shawn Michaels, Rob Van Dam, Mick Foley, Chris Benoit. He would finally pick up a win over Triple H. And of course, he would kill the legend of Ric Flair at Taboo Tuesday 2004. You look at all these legends that Randy Orton killed. Dusty Rhodes as well, Sergeant Slaughter. He spat in the face of Harley Race. So many legends he killed. And along the way, he picked up the IC title, the tag team titles, and of course the World Heavyweight title. So, very, very impressive gimmick. Out of all of the gimmicks Randy Orton has had in his career, Legend Killer, the Viper, the Apex Predator, I still go with the Legend Killer. It was so good, so entertaining, and he has brought it back a number of times on and off over the years. But that run from 2003 to 2007 was fantastic. I absolutely loved it. Now, in terms of the success and failures of the Legend Killer run, I'm going to go out and say, without hesitation, a complete success. It made Randy Orton into a household name. It made Randy Orton one of the top heels in the company. From Evolution to Single Star to Rated RKO to Solo Star again, you name it. Legend Killer gimmick, best persona of Randy Orton ever. And when he introduced the punt kick, that just made him even more ferocious, I would say. Really good stuff here. And I still say to this day, out of everything Randy Orton's done in his now 20 plus year career, the Legend Killer run was his best work. I really enjoyed it. And if Randy Orton does come back to WWE, I've been hearing stories that he might not because of a back injury, but we'll see really. But if he does come back and he is going to retire, I'd love to see him retire as the Legend Killer, because that to me was, the height of Randy Orton as a character, as a performer, as a wrestler. He was just the man. He was unbelievable, in my opinion. So that's going to be it from me. I'm going to wrap this up now. What was your thoughts on Randy Orton's Legend Killer run from 2003 to 2007? Did you enjoy it? Do you deem it a success or failure? What was your favourite moment during that run? What was your favourite match from the Legend Killer run? Do you feel that the Legend Killer gimmick was Randy Orton's best persona? And would you go out and say it was the best work of his entire career? You know what to do, guys. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, leave your thoughts and comments down below. And I will see all of you next time for another edition of the Wrestling Discussion Series. So until then, take care, everybody, and stay safe. And once again, as always, much appreciated. Thanks for listening.